Hey, Fargo Public Schools needs to be in your show, do an interview, and answer questions about this. Well, apparently we did ask for an interview. They said thanks, but no thanks. What else is new? Someone who's always very gracious with his time, and I'm going to presume way more busy than people at Fargo Public Schools, and still makes time to speak to you, his constituents, is the one and only Dr. Scott Jensen. Speaking about education, he dropped his education platform probably just about an hour ago, and he's joining us live here today. So, Dr. Jensen, as always, thank you so much for giving us some of your time. You shared your education platform today. What does that mean for the people listening right now?
Well, thanks, Chris, for having me on. It's always good to be with you. You're always interested in having solutions to real problems, and that's what we're trying to do here. Clearly, in Minnesota, our K through 12 education program is not what it used to be. We used to be top 5, and we aren't anymore. The fact of the matter is, we spend 150% of what a lot of states do, and we're underperforming them. This is not about partisan politics. This is about our kids. I think everybody understands that when we hammer our children with aspects of critical race theory, telling them that what they accomplish isn't really their accomplishment, it's just because of the color of their skin, we know that this is a horrific transgression that we're committing with our children. So we came out with a 10-point plan, and just real quickly, Chris, we think that parents need to have a Bill of Rights to protect themselves, protect their opportunity to get a hold of curriculum, and to know that parents are in charge and they're not allowing government or anyone else to co-opt the authority that is theirs and theirs alone. We also, number 2, is we wanted to raise achievement for all students. We need to set standards in reading, writing, and arithmetic that reflect greater rigor. And when we're not doing that, we're not doing anybody any favors. We also need to have a bold plan for school choice. That's the big idea that we have to entertain right now. There's no reason why a young person should be relegated to an underperforming school district because of his or her zip code. And I think we absolutely need to have school choice, but we also have to provide some funding for the home public school district, so that if they end up having Johnny or Janie bounce back into the school district, they've got a place for them. And so we have to pay the public schools to make sure that they can do that. We need to get rid of the divisive curricula and the indoctrinating kinds of conceptual ideologies out of the classroom. We need to make Minnesota schools safer at multiple levels. We have to have safety plans. We need to make certain that teachers are protected. We need to partner with law enforcement, churches. But the bottom line is we need to really focus on mental health, and that's a huge issue.
That is a huge issue.
We have to have all kids be present, Chris. We've got some of the school districts thinking that, well, if you're such and such color of skin, being truant or skipping school isn't going to be punished because of this exceptional circumstance or whatever. And in those situations, this isn't really helping those underperforming kids or those truant children. We need them to be in the school, and that's the only way that we're going to really be able to ensure that we can make a difference. We need to protect and promote homeschooling families. Homeschooling families have taught us a lot. They're very successful. They were, frankly, part of the eyes wide open during the COVID-19 pandemic, and for that we'll always owe homeschooling parents a debt of gratitude. But we need to absolutely protect and promote homeschooling. We need to teach subjects with real-world application to them. We need personal finance, character development, civics. Not all kids learn by looking at a computer screen, and we need to be able to touch kids in multiple ways, audially, visually, however. We need to implement a broader transfer of credit in higher education so kids aren't finding out from, they transfer universities or colleges or whatever, and they find out, gee whiz, I just found out that I'm not a junior anymore. Now I'm in the tail end of my freshman year. This has got to stop. We've got to do a better job. And lastly, the Minnesota State Higher Education Grant Program needs to be transformed. We need to turn it into a forgivable loan program that incentivizes students to live and work in the state of Minnesota. We don't want to be paying for these educations, and then as soon as they're done, off they go out of the state. We need their brain power. We need their work ethic. We need all the things that they can contribute to Minnesota. This is not elective, Chris, in terms of is it time to do something now? This is urgent. Minnesota is failing. We got a education report 2 weeks ago, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at that thing and say, what in the world has happened to K through 12 in Minnesota?
I mean, I hate to say this, but you're spot on. Minnesota's numbers have been dropping precipitously. And I think what's most concerning is you talked about some of the CRT stuff and things like that. My point is that you would think with that sort of conversation in Minnesota, the numbers for people of color would be much better. But boy, you dive into the numbers in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and the scores for young Black Americans, Hispanics, it's sad. I mean, they're that bad. What say you?
Well, I agree with you, but I would also say this. Perhaps the most concerning issue that we're dealing with right now, this is hard to say, but I know it's a big deal that our kids are failing to achieve what they should achieve. But from my perspective as future governor, it's incredibly concerning to me that there's a significant portion of the population that's willing to turn a blind eye to our crisis in education and say, it's all okay. Don't get your undies in a bundle. We can go on the way we're going on. Just add more money into it. We've got Tim Walz talking about, well, Jensen doesn't want to fully fund a school or our kids. I don't even know what fully fund means. Right now we spend some $13,000, $14,000 a kid. What is fully funded? Is that $50,000? And until we get to that number, we're not doing the job. Is it $20,000? And once we get to $20,000, they raise it to $25,000. This has got to be a time where everybody comes together and says, this is not acceptable. And we don't have that going on.
And Dr. Jensen, I think the one thing too that I would add, and maybe you can prove me wrong here, I've yet to see this, but can you tell me one school district in the nation where they said, hey, we're going to spend more money and the scores actually went up? I haven't seen it.
It's a great. No, I can't give you that either. But I can tell you this. I've seen Minnesota in the last biennial budget give arguably the biggest increase in actual dollars to K through 12 than in decades. And our performance continues to drop.
Yeah.
And people are really tuned in to what's happening to our minority populations. In many of the minority communities, they're getting hurt the worst.
Yes.
They're dropping the most. The achievement gap is huge.
Sorry, Dr. Jensen, just we're coming up on our break. I have to play something for our audience here. There's two things I have to play for you and for our audience today. I don't even know if you've seen this, Dr. Jensen, but so you just mentioned all this money that has now been put into education, and yet the scores continue to go down. And now the Department of Education in Minnesota has released two 30-second ads. I want the people of Minnesota to hear this. They've released two 30-second ads. I'm going to play one of them for you in a moment for a statewide campaign. Listen to this spot, and if anyone knows anything about media, you know it's not cheap. It's not cheap to go do a statewide campaign. So your tax dollars are being used to put this up across the state. Listen.
It's our differences that make all the headlines these days.
But what about our similarities?
Most of us would do what educators do. Greet every day with a smile and hope through any obstacles.
Create a safe, welcoming environment
where all students can reach the potential that lies within them. This school year, let's embrace what we all have in common
and support public education.
Welcome back to school, Minnesota.
Dr. Jensen, you and I could have done that for free. Like, I mean, help me understand what's going on here.
I actually saw that ad last night about midnight when I was going to bed. And I thought then what I think now, what a crock of milk post pablum. I mean, let's support what we can all support. Let's embrace what we can all embrace. What we're talking about here is a failed education system, and these people are behaving like everything's cool with the world. They spent millions of dollars on this ad campaign, and I would say this, shame on them. Minnesota is absolutely turning its back on teachers. Teachers are working their butts off in the classroom. They're buying school supplies for the kids because the kids don't have them. They're buying tablets and paper and pencils and things like this. And you've got Ed Minnesota dissing teachers, the teachers that actually pay dues to Ed Minnesota. And I think Ed Minnesota is going to get its comeuppance on that because teachers are smart people. They're watching, and they have got to be infuriated by this pablum that's being served up to them. For what reason, I can't guess.
For millions of